a friend of ours, Dr. Rollergator, who had an extremely popular, ironic account in which he often said very important things, but did so in a highly stylized fashion that often involved him shouting in all caps. And
he is a real person.
Yes, he is. Well, sure, he's not a bot or a crocodile or crocodilian. He was suspended 4 months ago for advocating violence on Twitter. And what he had in fact said, I'm not sure if Zach is in a position to show Dr. Rollergator's tweet. If not, I can just describe it.
Well, you sent me some things.
Well, don't worry about it. I'll describe it. What Dr. Rollergator said, I believe he was talking to Jordan Peterson and Justin Trudeau, who Peterson had taken Trudeau to task, and Dr. Rollergator suggested that, I believe this is right, that they purchase white leather gloves with which to slap each other across the face, signaling the desire for a duel. And this is odd because Twitter suspended Dr. Rollergator and for 4 months has what presumably is just simply ignored appeals that this was not in fact inciting violence. And it's obviously, if you think about it, on the one hand, while it may technically be true that slapping somebody across the face with a white leather glove is violence by some legal definition. No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, well, but
I'm not a legal scholar. It sounds like it would plausibly be assault, but violence? Seriously?
Right, but here's the point. One, a slap is obviously symbolic at one level, right? An open hand distributes the force over a large surface area. So while a slap may not feel good, the point is it is not inherently designed to do damage. But a slap with a glove is yet one more step removed from violence. It is symbolic. And then Dr. Rollergator's tweet is yet a third step removed in the sense that he was speaking ironically and was clearly not advocating that anybody actually slap anybody else. So the idea of being suspended for tweeting such a thing, which was
still believing presumably that some people might deserve it.
Deserve it or not. The point is, do we really want Twitter policing the question of violence if it views this as sufficiently violent that it is justification to suspend an account indefinitely? Well, this takes a whole new turn with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, in which many people, including quite a number of blue check marks, have advocated outright violence on Twitter and not suffered the same fate as Dr. Rollergator. I've seen tweets that advocate burning down churches, the building of pipe bombs, all sorts of things, right? Now that's actual violence being advocated by people on Twitter, and Twitter is doing nothing about it. So there's an obvious conflict here. There's a question about the application of the rule. So Twitter ostensibly has a rule against advocating violence, but what could possibly explain Dr. Rollergator's account being suspended for advocating that someone buy leather gloves with which to slap someone else across the face when people who are advocating the burning down of churches or the building of pipe bombs are allowed to continue on with this behavior? So I want to give you a chance to jump in if you had anything.
No, I think as when we were talking about this earlier, as you said, this is 1 for me and 2 for you territory.
Right.
It's and as I've said a number of times, it's Twitter sanctioned violence.
Right. And so this is really the key point, is that on the one hand, so what we have is selective enforcement, right? We have a circumstance in which certain people, because Twitter views them as politically hostile, have such a low bar set that you can't even make an ironic tweet about a white leather glove and not be suspended. But for other people, apparently there's no level of violence that you could advocate that would get you in similar trouble. And the point I wanted to make is this is not Twitter being against violence, right? This is actually characteristic of something else entirely. When somebody wants their opponent restrained so that they cannot engage in violence, but they want full liberty to engage in violence, that's not an anti-violence position. That's actually a pro-violence position and a violent asymmetry that is being advocated. And so I think increasingly we need to look at what Twitter is doing in this light. And, you know, Twitter is, of course, not alone. We've seen this on all of the social media platforms. The idea that there is some set of rules in the terms of service that is understood to apply to everybody, but the differential application of those rules is actually nakedly political, or it's political, but for a thin veneer, you know, a pretense of fair application. And at what point do we watch these things being unfairly applied? At what point do we just simply get to say, I'm sorry, a terms of service that applies to some users and not others is not the terms of service, right? It's a weapon of some kind. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just simply where we are with Twitter. We are watching them wield weapons against people who hold perspectives different than their own. And who needs a social media platform that is willing to let you say whatever you want so long as you agree with them?
Yeah. Not I. But it's what we've got.
But it's what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we've got. And anyway, it is ironically exactly the thing that leads to violence. Mm-hmm. Right? If you want a less violent world, a world, you know, I think actually Sam Harris has made this point, right? We have two choices. We can either learn how to talk, or we can resort to violence because we're left with nothing else. So we better figure out how to talk. And if the places on which we would talk, or the paper on which we would write to each other, are going to take a position that certain things can't be discussed, well, you know, they are setting the stage for a violent future that all of us will regret.